Hey, what's up? Friday edition of Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, and Andrew Mason. And Mace, the AFC West is ever changing. And now with the Las Vegas Raiders, looks like Mark Davis is actually going to make the right call and keep the interim head coach, this time Antonio Pierce.
Well, it's changing, but staying the same for the Raiders with Antonio Pierce, who, of course, came in, replaced Josh McDaniels, had them playing pretty good ball most of the way down the stretch. And you get the sense, Cease, that this is a decision that Mark Davis is making because he looks back a couple of years earlier at when the team surged to a playoff spot with Rich Bisaccia as interim head coach, and then he decided to bring in Josh McDaniels, who disrupted things, changed things, and set them back. Now it's making the other decision. We'll see if it's the right one.
Yeah, we'll see if it's the right one for the Raiders, but we know that team is incredibly motivated by Antonio Pierce. Players love him. There was the report that Max Crosby was going to ask for a trade. Davante Adams, there was that type of talk as well,
Yeah.
May. So you get a team now that's extra motivated because they kept their guy.
Yeah, but the thing is, now we see how long that lasts. It's one of those moves where it'll feel good in the short term. We've seen this happen a few times where teams kept the interim coach into the next year, were able to sustain some good feelings, but it didn't necessarily pan out. I mean, I'll give you an example. Remember when the Chiefs, back in the early 2010s, they brought back Romeo Crennel, who had replaced Todd Haley. Crennel came in as the interim head coach. They upset the Packers, then unbeaten at Arrowhead down the stretch of that season. They can bring Crennel back. They go 2-14 in 2012. Not saying that's what's in line for the Raiders, but there can be a downside to going with the interim, perhaps, a low ceiling if that interim head coach isn't up for the job. Antonio Pierce did show some good signs, though, and certainly can run a team better than Josh McDaniels did. That was proven.
For sure. No doubt about that. And with Antonio Pierce, we have the conversation all the time about the Broncos and their quarterback situation. They do have Aiden O'Connell there, and it's a concern with the experience that he got. He's certainly not a rookie next year with all that starting experience. But would you believe the Raiders are the type of team to maybe consider a quarterback in this draft to push Aiden O'Connell, because Jimmy Garoppolo might wind up here with the Broncos? So it might be changing in terms of, okay, Aiden O'Connell's kind of their starter, but the Broncos might be facing a different starter.
Perhaps, although Jimmy Garoppolo going from the Raiders to Denver, doesn't that smack of like deck chair shuffling on the Titanic a little bit?
A little bit, yeah.
I'm not sure that's solving the problem long term. He could be a perfectly fine bridge, but not a long-term answer for the Broncos, right? So, but it would be interesting. But then the Raiders probably, what do? They'll probably bring in, another bridge type of quarterback behind Aiden O'Connell if they don't draft somebody. I mean, that's I guess I'm just cool on Garoppolo.
Right. Yeah. It's not a name that gets the fan base excited whatsoever, certainly. But if we look at the changing landscape of the AFC West, it's changing by staying the same with Antonio Pierce, well-coached team, maybe a different quarterback situation. Josh Jacobs probably gone. So, like, if you're the Broncos and you're trying to establish a pecking order, okay, Chiefs number one, damn it, I hate that, but that's the reality. Then it's kind of a mix here. It's almost kind of a mess behind Kansas City. Not that Kansas City's not a mess in certain parts of their own roster.
Well, it's funny. So we're breaking down the AFC West. I know we were going to talk about another potential coaching change. Let's just go to the Chargers.
Okay.
I'm going to pivot a little bit because the winds seem to be blowing in Jim Harbaugh's direction.
Right.
And one of the things that was interesting this week is that the Chargers not only interviewed Jim Harbaugh, but they also interviewed David Shaw. David Shaw, former Stanford head coach, interviewed with the Broncos last January, worked under Jim Harbaugh at Stanford before rising to the head coaching job at Stanford when Harbaugh left for the 49ers. Do you get the sense that maybe the Shaw interview was a little bit of Jim Harbaugh starting to put his staff together? Maybe Shaw becomes his assistant head coach with the Chargers if he takes that job.
Yeah, and we've seen that before in the National Football League where it's like, wow, somebody's getting an interview, and it's actually an interview for basically to be on the staff, but not the head coach. Shaw out of Stanford this last season. What was it, like 3 years of 3-9, something like that? It fell apart there at the end, but well respected among coaching circles in both the NFL. I know CFL guys love him as well. So like, yeah, maybe it is Harbaugh putting together a staff, but you want a curveball of all curveballs, Mace? Would Harbaugh take a quarterback? Would Harbaugh take JJ McCarthy? Would Harbaugh find a way if he, in fact, does get the Chargers job? They have Justin Herbert. Herbert is amazing. And I'm not saying Herbert would be available for trade because that would be just crazy.
And they wouldn't trade him within the division.
Exactly.
So let's just take that dream off the table
but
here.
If we're
that
talking
would not happen.
Raiders drafting a quarterback because of Aiden O'Connell. Well, if the Chargers get Harbaugh and he loves JJ McCarthy, would they go ahead and draft JJ McCarthy?
Maybe. That'd be wild, wouldn't it? If they draft JJ McCarthy with Justin Herbert still playing really well, you know what that reminds me of? Dan Reeves drafting Tommy Maddox when he had John Elway going into his 10th season.
Wow.
And Elway still having, as it turned out, 7 seasons left in his career. He was 3-9 going into his 10th year. Picked Maddox there with some good receivers that could have helped the Broncos right away. Yeah.
Well, and if you're JJ McCarthy, you got to go behind Justin Herbert and learn and develop. And then maybe in a couple of years, Herbert would be available. And again, it sounds crazy. How would you do that? But this is the NFL, man. It's all about relationships. There's a clearly established relationship with Harbaugh and McCarthy.
There is, but at the same time, looking at Jim Harbaugh, his last time as an NFL head coach, he inherited Alex Smith. He worked with Alex Smith. Got the team better. The 49ers quickly went from a team that I believe had 8 straight losing seasons to one that came within a muffed punt return of going to the Super Bowl.
Right.
In 1 year. So I think it would be counterintuitive for Jim Harbaugh to bring in JJ McCarthy if he went to the Chargers when you've already got Justin Herbert. And oh, by the way, you've got a roster with a lot of needs that need to be addressed.
The cupboards are bare with the Chargers, but I'm going to give it to you like this because you just mentioned Alex Smith. Who was behind him and took his job? Because Alex Smith was healthy when Colin Kaepernick came in.
Well, they drafted Colin
eventually
Kaepernick
in the second round.
Yep.
So could McCarthy fall to the second? We're all saying first round teams are crazy, and teams are crazy in this league. But if McCarthy falls to the second, you telling me there isn't a Kaepernick Smith situation brewing? There could be.
That'd be wild.
It's the NFL.
I still don't see it though.
Okay. But if you're the Broncos,
if you're the Chargers, you're hiring Jim Harbaugh presumably to coach Justin Herbert, right?
Right.
I mean, yeah. Some things just don't. I mean, it seems crazy. That seems like if it were the plan, if Jim Harbaugh made it clear that were the plan, that they'd look in another direction. They'd try to make a bigger push for Bill Belichick, or they'd go with an offensive type of coach.
Yes.
Right. So,
but it looks like the Spanos family is going to spend the money. And Mace, I know you've heard the same thing. They're actually wanting to get away from the reputation of that they're cheap. So if you're the Broncos and you got a ton of needs, we talk a ton of quarterback on this show, but you know what? You can't rest on your laurels if you're the Denver Broncos, because you have the Raiders staying strong with Antonio Pierce, perhaps getting stronger. You have the Chargers. And if the Spanos family truly is not wanting to be seen as cheap, they're going to spend the money. They're going to put the resources where they need to. And Jim Harbaugh, he's a hell of a coach. You say what you will about his personality, but now you've got, Pierce putting that team in the right direction. You've got Harbaugh potentially putting the Chargers in the right direction. Broncos got a lot of work to do, and everyone else in the division is getting better.
Yeah, and actually, if you're the Raiders with Antonio Pierce, you're looking around and seeing Andy Reid, potentially Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton. Of course, at the same time, you just beat the Sean Payton-led team twice.
Right.
And you haven't lost to that Broncos team since the end of the 2019 season.
Right.
So they probably have no fear in that regard. But it's interesting. Like, you step back and say, whoa, that is like that quartet of coaches, even though Antonio Pierce just has the interim experience right now, that's as good a group as you're going to find in the NFL. Certainly as accomplished a group when you're talking about Harbaugh has been to a Super Bowl, Sean Payton's won a Super Bowl, Andy Reid has won multiple Super Bowls.
And God bless a team like Tampa Bay with Baker the Babymaker. This ain't the NFC South. You look at the AFC West, I see it as just getting tougher. And the Chargers likely will get Harbaugh. That's at least the rumblings right now. But it's like, this isn't getting any easier. What did Peyton Manning say in that one quote? No, nothing easy out here.
Yeah.
Well, nothing easy in the AFC West.
There was an old quote from Jimmy Johnson, or from Buddy Ryan regarding Jimmy Johnson back in 1989, when the Cowboys went 1-15 in Jimmy's first year, and Buddy Ryan said there are no East Carolinas on the schedule because Jimmy had come from the University of Miami. You think
what's he got against the Pirates?
Yeah, I mean, at the time ECU was down, so I kind of get that, but still,
yeah.
But that's the sort of thing you don't get a respite in the NFL. I mean, the Broncos thought they were in good playoff position, coming back home to face New England, and the Patriots came in and won. And speaking of those Patriots and the coach of those Patriots, Bill Belichick, turned out that was his last win as Patriots head coach. Now, you talked about the NFC South. I think Bill Belichick looks at the NFC South and says, I can claim this right here and now, which is why it looks like the Falcons are zooming on Bill Belichick as their next head coach.
Right. And then Atlanta has already had one meeting with Arthur Blank and Bill Belichick. I believe a second meeting either has already happened or is scheduled to happen. And they're interviewing other coaching candidates, which is fine. But it really seems like they're honed in on Bill Belichick, which leads us to the Broncos connection, Mace, because everyone was connecting. Where's Russell Wilson going to land? I believe Vegas odds had the Patriots with Belichick at the time as the number one. When Russell Wilson was benched, it was seen that Belichick would grab Russell Wilson. Now, if he goes to Atlanta, you've got Kyle Pitts, who, by the way, was banged up. That came out today. Like, he's been dealing with injuries. Shocker, because he hasn't looked the same. Drake London, who's an amazing young wide receiver. Bijan Robinson, maybe the best running back in football. Tyler Allgeier's no slappy either. So you have a bunch of skill position players. You don't have a quarterback. If Belichick goes to Atlanta, what are the chances that Russell Wilson follows him?
They're decent, but would Bill Belichick rather have Kirk Cousins?
Yes.
Then I'd say Kirk Cousins is more of a favorite than Russell Wilson.
Really?
To be in Atlanta.
Okay.
Well, Kirk Cousins will do things on rhythm, on time. And coaches kind of crave that. This is really going to be interesting with Russell Wilson. I mean, there are a bunch of possibilities, but what if when he and Mark Rogers, his agent, go out there and start putting out feelers, testing the market, what if there isn't an obvious fit? I think there will be a fit at some point, but I don't know that Russell Wilson is going to be the first choice of a team that's looking for a veteran quarterback. I think Kirk Cousins probably becomes that first choice.
Yeah, I think Cousins would be at the top of the list for pretty much anyone that's out there in need of a quarterback in the situations around the league. You're going, okay, yeah, it's Cousins over Wilson, which by the way, they're not trading Russell Wilson. Nobody's trading for that contract. But it's like, okay, Pittsburgh maybe. And there's not a lot of landing spots for Russell Wilson that you can say for sure this team would be interested.
Raiders.
Oh, God. Where he wouldn't beat out Aiden O'Connell? Would he beat out Aiden O'Connell?
Well, you'd be bringing him in and saying he's getting the job. You're handing it to him. You're not having a competition, right?
Wow.
Aiden O'Connell will be your backup. Ooh, wouldn't that be interesting? Wouldn't that be saucy if Russell Wilson was a Raider?
Yeah.
Another layer to the Broncos-Raiders rivalry right there.
Exactly.
Wouldn't that have to be your season opener?
You'd think it would make the most sense.
Would you want it in Vegas or in Denver?
In Denver. Get him in front of this crowd. Put him out there. You want to be treacherous, and go to the Las Vegas Raiders, then yeah, put him in front of the home crowd.
I'm going to bet that if that happens, the Broncos don't start with an onside kick attempt. Actually, you know what? Sean Payton gets a lot of flack for that. That's actually a perfectly defensible call. And if not for being offsides by a
Tremont
smidge, Smith would have worked.
Yeah.
Caught the Raiders completely off guard. But the risk of a penalty is part of the calculus when you're making that call. But I don't think that was the awful call that cost them the game that a lot of people believe it was.
Right. A lot of overreaction from some. Not on this show. We're trying to stay steady. I get emotional. Mace, you're very steady. You know what we're doing a week from today?
Traveling to the Shrine.
Exactly. Here we come, Texas. OBT on the road. It's a road trip, baby.
What time are you getting to Frisco, by the way?
It'll be in the afternoon.
Me too.
Yeah. So maybe a Texas dinner.
We'll find something.
Texas toast.
Is Texas toast really a thing, or is it Is it
a thing in Texas?
Because it's a thick piece of toast. So I just thought it was the whole thing of everything's bigger in Texas, including how we slice the toast. Right.
Right.
anyway, but yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there in Frisco a week from today, and then a week from Saturday is the first Shrine Bowl practice.
Yes.
We start our All-Star game tour that week with the Shrine Bowl, then on to the Senior Bowl. So we'll get our eyes on about 200 or so prospects.
Right. It's not just about quarterback. We're going to get eyes on all of them, and it's going to be fantastic for you out there. So ride along with us on YouTube. You're going to have Saturday shows. You're going to have Sunday shows, probably 2 shows a day, Monday through Friday, as we go through Shrine Game and then Senior Bowl. So that's coming up in 1 week from today. He is Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm Cecil Lammey saying, help us do the YouTube things. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. I think we got the hand right. Almost correct. There we go. He's Mace. I'm Cease. OBT is a BFD. Thanks for watching. As always, stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty.